Welcome back to Intentional Trips. I am Lindy Eamon, and this is the present, actually. I know I ended the last episode saying that I would probably get into the nitty gritty of food and energy and all of how that impacts us in my journey with all of that, and I will get there. But I have been feeling myself in the last few days circling more around the present moment that I'm in. And it's this interesting thing that I can feel, infinitely, right? There are these layers and layers and layers that we shed of ourselves and of old patterns and things that no longer serve us and all of that. And so much of that has been released for me. But there's always just the little things that you pop up and you're like, oh, that's what you are. You're still here. You can hang out, but also you can go, and one of those things that I recognized this morning while I was journaling is these tiny little remnants of a voice somewhere in me that has this idea of what should be done, right? And again, I have released and shed like millennia worth of ideas about how anything in life is meant to be, right? And I am as close to just purely being and allowing that being to be as I have ever been. And there's always more to go, right? Until we are literally like, I don't know, it, I guess. And I am it, and I am still becoming it because all things are true. Um, yeah, and it was surprising because I have actually, there is so much just complete flow in my life at this point. So it's beautiful and surprising when you realize the little places where it's like, oh wow, that's what you are. I thought you were gone, but here you are. Um, yeah, and this idea, this thing in my head that I was like, well, I said I was gonna speak about the food, and I should be writing a Substack article, and I should because I know how all of this looks in my head, and it's the speaking and the writing and the this and the that, and it's all of those things, and it also can only ever be. When I say it, I mean this thing that I'm creating, the sharing of the essence, the everything, the journey, the what have you. Um, but I realized that part of it too also needs to be kind of the speaking to what it all is in this moment, right? And I understood that that's what the present would be when I realized that that was part of this kind of three-part thing that I guess I'm creating here as far as the YouTube and the podcast go. Um and so that was very clear to me. And it has been surprising even just in this day as this has been realizing that I'm like, oh no, like the deeper layers of what that means. It's literally just being like, what does it feel like? Also, sorry to interrupt. If you're watching this, if you're listening, you probably aren't aware of what I'm talking about. If you're watching this, I bounce. I sit on an exercise ball and I bounce up and down all the time. I've done this my entire life, literally since before I could walk. I would pull myself up on the side of my crib and just like jump up and down. And that's how my parents apparently knew I was awake from a nap because they could like hear the crib being like, "Rah, rah, rah." So I do my best to kind of not do that because I know it can be distracting. And also, like, when I'm really lost in like thought and exploration, like it just kind of happens naturally. So if you are visually watching this and you don't like seeing that, either avert your eyes or just listen to it because that's just me, baby. I bounce. I'm Tigger. I also love swinging. I bring my hammock everywhere I go on Earth. Swinging accomplishes a very similar thing. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, documenting kind of the process and the journey and all of this, like as it's happening in this moment, right? And what all of that looks and feels like. Um, yeah, and kind of speaking to the process of my existence as it is now. Um, what's been interesting, 2025, I was acutely aware of the fact that I was basically grieving the entire first era of my life. And I firmly believe that there's infinite eras and timelines and chapters, right, that all of us will experience in these lives. Um, I actually, in 2021, in like February, I had this experience with acid. I went up to northern Wisconsin. This was like peak COVID lockdown winter, right? And I actually I remember talking to my therapist. We had been in lockdown for a year, right? So like in like the most isolated anyone's ever been. I was in and around Chicago, so like very, yeah, it wasn't like the parts of America that had like kind of lockdown, but not really. It was like no, like I had not seen anyone. I was at this point quarantining in a house in the suburbs with one of my best friends. Um, so I had another human, right? But it was like, yeah, very much isolated for a year. And I remember having this session with my therapist and just being like, I can't explain it, but I feel like I really just need to like be alone. And I was like, I think what I need is to like rent a cabin in Wisconsin and like do a lot of psychedelics like by myself, like alone in this year where I'd been nothing but alone, right? And my therapist at the time, she was like, she only like broke therapist character a few times, and every time she did, it was fucking amazing. But she goes, Lindy, I'm gonna be so real with you right now. She's like, if any of my other clients told me that what they thought they needed right now was to be alone in a cabin doing psychedelics, I would be very, very, very concerned. For you, I think this is a really good idea. I was like, great, okay. So I went up to Chippewa Falls, and yeah. Anyway, during this experience, one of the things that I was so able to clearly visualize, right? And this is one of the beautiful things about psychedelics is that like they help us see things that are in so many ways quite obvious when we can see them, but it helps us view them in a way that is just like, oh, duh. And I was able to see my life and my timeline as almost these like parenthetical little eras. For me, very often bookended actually by flights. And because travel is so much of my journey, right? And so it would be like, there might be one entire saga that starts, and we won't even just in general, right? It might start here, but then within that first parenthesis, there is then like this little side thing, and then that starts, and then there might be like three things within that, but then there's like it's just this giant era full of all of these little smaller chapters, right? And it's like, okay, so like, for example, when I first moved to Australia, it's like that's one big bookend. But then there is the first job that I got and the people that I met within those jobs and like those experiences, and some of them ended, and then that job ended. And so this is like a whole that job is a series of parentheses within the larger thing of Australia. And then there's the new job and everything that opens. And it's just, yeah, all of this to say in 2025 I was acutely aware of the fact that like the parenthesis around the first part of my entire life was ending, and I wasn't quite ready for it to end. I let myself feel it and love it and mourn it and grieve it, and also just kind of like revel in how beautiful it had been and how much I had moved through and become. And yeah, but by the end of the year, it was like, okay, like I have sat in this, I have allowed this to kind of culminate. And for me, so much of that, it's the the healing journey, right? The journey of self-discovery, the journey of spiritual growth, like all, when you're seeking something. For so long, that was my entire world, right? As long as I can remember, I have been questioning and seeking and exploring and yearning and feeling apart from myself and doing what I can to kind of understand myself and heal it and come home. And I mean that's the journey, right? That's a lot of what it is that I'm sharing here. Um but I remember this moment because again, I think I've mentioned that so much of that journey ended up literally being going. I physically went back on Earth to everywhere on Earth that I had ever been that had been significant, and I saved the versions of me that had been there before, through being the light of my own being now. And I remember after I went to the last place, in June 2024, this feeling as I was leaving, and that when we get there, I mean yeah, oh, he was a doozy of a while. But just on the other side, being like, but like, what now? Right? Like my whole life up until that point. At that point, I was 33 and a third. um, and it was like, okay, but when it's like catching the mailman, like the dog that catches the mailman, right? It's like they spend their whole life chasing the mailman. But what do you do once you catch it? And the answer I knew, right, was telling the story, was sharing it, was then writing it, was bringing it all to life in that embodied, version of myself. And it has taken like the year and a half since then. Part of it was a massive amount of integration of all of the just things I had experienced and uncovered that hadn't been fully internalized yet. Um, and a large part of it was just kind of me actively choosing, because that's the thing, right? Is that like it's this thing where multiple things can be true. When you are healing and when you are growing, there is work that you need to do, of course, right? There's love that you need to find for yourself and with yourself. And there's trauma that needs to be healed. There's stuff that needs to be put back together. And at the same time, we have a complete choice in the matter. We literally, like, it is possible to just fully decide that you're just kind of done with feeling the way that you felt and letting these things rule you and just being done. That is an option. And it is so much more complicated than that. And I would never in a million years tell somebody like, oh, well, just like you're choosing to like suffer right now. Because it's like, no, it's not that, right? There's so much to it. And as I've gone down this journey and this path and this, and become so acutely aware of my own process, my own being, I am, I do know that there is a choice in the matter, and I am someone, and I love the way that I navigate things. It's me, it's the way that I am as a human being. But like, I do love to sit in stuff. Like, I can see where I'm going and what needs to be healed and what is, what I get to release and all of that. I can see that for a really long time before my mind is fully like, okay, we can let this go now. Because there's something in me that actually does love sitting in the discomfort of kind of being like, but if we held out a little bit longer, and it's like, okay, that's me. And maybe I have said this, I don't know, but it's like, that's where my writing comes from. That's where my best poetry, my best stories, it comes from that place where I'm like, I put myself in the pressure cooker of being like, I feel so much, and it's like, just let it go. But I'm not ready to until I'm ready to. So all of that to say, 2025 was this year where I was acutely aware that I was like, okay, this is done. And I'm going to choose to let myself linger in this chapter, in this era, a little while longer, because it was so sweet. Um, and I loved, and it's hard to explain, because I feel like if you aren't in my brain, which no one else is, like, it sounds, I don't know, like, I don't even know what it sounds, but it's like, it's so beautiful. Like, people see emotion and they automatically assume that it's like, it's bad, like, oh no, you are grieving and you're sad and I have to fix that. And it's like, no, like, just let things be, right? Um, but yeah, like, this feeling of just like immense mourning and love for all that has been, and the recognition of everything that I am now like completely releasing and leaving in that era. And I know the things that are meant to come with me, the pieces of me that stay, the things that carry through. And I know the things that I'm leaving behind are meant to be left, and it doesn't mean that I can't love them wholly and be grateful for the place in my life that they served, while also knowing that it's time for them to go, right? Um, yeah, and so in a lot of just the ways I was and the ways of my being and the yeah, just eh, I let it end, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I can feel right now, right, that that this complete new era, this complete new chapter is beginning, and it's right, and it's what I've been moving towards my entire life. And there is also this kind of like getting of one's bearings, of course, in it, and also being like, okay, like, yeah, like this is I don't, yeah, the words have kind of floated away, but it's just like we're here, right? And I think me speaking to this in this moment in the present is just kind of acknowledging that. And one of the things that's helped me kind of get to this realization of just kind of documenting what it feels like, I guess, I guess maybe even me saying this out loud is like, this is part of that kind of new shift, because for so long my whole process, my whole everything, my internal world lived like in me and only in me. I was very protective of it. I have always been somebody who is like, I will not say anything unless I am fully confident that what I'm going to say is grounded in my, to the best of my ability, my understanding of what is true, what is real, right? Um, and so part of that has also been in my own kind of journey of becoming. It was like I couldn't tell anyone what I was even doing. One, because I didn't even fully understand it, but also because I was like, this is so delicate. This is so purely of me that I actually can't even like bring any other energy into it, because it's so like raw and real. Um, it's interesting, even as I'm saying that it's like that is just a major shift. The fact that I'm sitting here speaking about what this current present process kind of feels like, because I literally could not have done this before now. I could not have done this with the 5 years ago, when I was starting to put those pieces together, where the story is starting, right? When I'm like, okay, I think this is what I'm doing, and I'm seeking, and I'm searching, and I'm growing, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. I just know that I have to do it. And the pieces, and it took so long for all of it to kind of come together in my own mind and my own soul, that like, yeah, it was unshareable until now. And so to kind of be like, okay, I'll tell you about that process, and that'll be, the trip, the integration, and the writing and the books and all of that. But then to also kind of be vocalizing this present thing of being like, yeah, this is me just kind of being like, okay, so now who are we now, and we're me, we're her, we're who we've always been. um yeah, I don't know if any, well, it makes sense to me, so um it's been interesting too, because so much of my journey has been, it's intuition led, right? There's this little voice in me that says this is where you've got to go and why, and that has been my entire life. It has shifted and evolved over time, and my ability to hear and listen has shifted and evolved over time. But for so much of the journey, um, especially of which I will be sharing here in this space, like, it was these past versions of me pulling me back, right? When I would start hearing these kind of whisperings in the universe, in my heart, in my mind, of being like, you know, Italy, for example, where I'm like, is it like Italy? Okay, so like why? What, and then it's just like I get out of my own way. I go there, I'm listening, and then realizing the layers of me that had lived there, and the way that those parallels were, completely in line with what was happening in my life at the present, and being like, oh my god, this is the same but different, and being able to kind of go through and pull myself out, right? And but it was always the present me going through to the past. And again, after I went to the last place I'm not sure why I'm not naming it. I will at some point, but apparently today I don't feel like naming it. That's not intentionally to be like super suspenseful. It's just like, mm, yeah, it's just not time. Um, but that was June 2024, and leaving. Well, when I was there, actually, I didn't know where I was going to go after that. I knew the week after, but I didn't know. Come July 2024, I had no idea where I was going on Earth. And it was about 10 days before I had nothing, nothing booked, nothing. That intuitive voice that always spoke to me hadn't said anything, to the point where, like, I was talking to some of my friends and I was like, literally July and beyond feels like such a black hole that part of me is like, am I going to die? Like, literally, I was just like, I've never experienced this kind of just energetic wall of no voice saying this is where you're meant to go. And it was very strange. And then Barbados appeared. About 10 days before I got there. This house sit for 2 months appeared, and I ended up going to Barbados. I'd never been there before. I just spent all of these years going back to all of these places, and picking up all of these pieces, going back, going back, going back. And then all of a sudden I'm in Barbados, which was, I made a map of it. It was like 1,200 miles or something, a radius around the island of Barbados that I had never been in my entire life. It was like the earth was like, the universe was like, where on earth can you go that is farther away from anywhere that you've ever, like, you need new energy. And I was like, okay. And so I went there. But it took a really long time for me to understand, because, it's when you're used to something, you kind of expect things to be the way that they've been, right? And so for a while, I was still operating in the process of, well, where do I go next? And just trying to feel that energy be open, in the way that I had before. And it just, for like a year, it was like nothing's really like, it wasn't going the way it always had. And I just, and places were appearing, but I was kind of just like, okay, yeah, I'll go there. I'll go there. But it was so different than it had been. And I realized in November, this past November, 2 months ago, um, that this shift had happened where I no longer needed to go back, right? I had done all of that. And so now these places that were appearing were either in the future, like future versions of me being like, come here. Or it was just like, there were a few places that were just kind of eternal, right? Like, I went back to Paris. Paris is a huge, huge place for me. I spent a lot of time in London. I spent 5.5 months in London in 2025. I've lived in London multiple times. Like, London is just almost like a safe space, almost like a neutral for me. Um, yeah, and so recognizing that it's like, okay, it's like a lot of these future versions or these present versions are now the ones that are speaking and pulling me to places, and just switching that in my mind as far as how my intuition and my heart are hearing and listening to what and where it is that is pulling me. And I felt this thing in me for about 2 years now, of kind of knowing that, and for me, it's like, again, it's hard to explain, because when I say knowing, I don't mean like, well, this is my plan. Like, I don't plan. There's no plan. There's no plan. You can't plan. The second I try to exert a plan or control, like, everything falls apart. I have no interest in planning or whatever. Like, when I speak about like something that exists in the future, that is coming from just something in me that just knows, right? And I could be wrong. I have no attachment to it, but there are these hits and these things that come through for me where it's like, and I've experienced this, again, you'll see this in the story enough now to just kind of know that, like, when something comes through in the way that says like, yeah, like, this exists later, I know what that sounds like, I know what that feels like, and I'm like, okay, it might exist tomorrow, it might exist in 20 years, it might never exist, but I'm pretty sure that it does. It's not mine to dictate when, how, where, what, whatever. I'm just kind of like, okay, I know you exist. um And yeah. And so one of those knowings was just kind of this thing that was like, once I kind of end the era that I had been in and start living in the next one, and I've gone back to all of the places and I've picked up the pieces and I've integrated all of the stuff, there was kind of this knowing that it was like, there will be this chapter again where I am traveling in a way that is, um kind of more vagabondy, more like backpackery, Which it's funny because, like, yes, I have been nomadic for 5 years now, right? 4 years, 5 years, a while. Um, and in the last 2 and a bit years, for the most part, I have been spending between 1 or 2 months, sometimes as many as like five, right, in one place. And there have been a few weeks of like travel stuff between those places, but I haven't just been like, I'm just kind of moving and grooving wherever I'm going. I'm not staying any, like, I've got no plan, right? And it's not like, yeah, that I'm not looking for a place to ground for a month or two. I have known that reinitiating myself into that kind of full on, just like free travel thing is on the horizon. In this kind of new, like, realized version, right? And one of the things that's been interesting in the last few days is realizing that it's like, oh no, like that's happening now. Um, I've been doing this house sit in Australia, this incredible house sit with this beautiful family and this wonderful cat. And it's been so amazing. And yeah, I got here in early December and I'm here for another week. And then I'm going back to India. And India, I've been there before. If you know me, you might remember when I was there in 2023, I just very serendipitously met this 84-year-old yoga master who took me in for a month and taught me Ashtanga every morning. And I, yeah, studied with him and, then spent another few months traveling. I started exploring Tantra when I was in India last time. India opened up a lot of doors for me. And India is the only new place that I went in the entire span of the journey that I had been on. Everywhere else was back. And then there was this one little blip of like a 3-4 month period in India in early 2023. And I hadn't felt this pull or need or anything to really go back. I always knew I would go back to India. Like I think that there's people of, well, two and a half minds, I'll say, with India. There are people who were like, did it once, literally never going back. And it's like, cool. And then there are people where, like me, where I was like, when I left the first time, I was like really ready to be done. And the second that I left, I was like, I will be back. I know I will be back when the time is right. And then I think that there's this like third category too of people who are just like, they literally can't get enough of it. And they just, it's their spot. And yeah, for me, I'm like, I had hit the limit the first time, but knew once I could, once the energy had kind of dissipated, I was like, oh yeah, I'm coming back for you when it's time. And I have a friend who's there right now, who's kind of the thing propelling me there to go and see this friend, spend time with him. I think it'll be very, very beautiful for our collective journey as friends, the two of us, but then also just for where we both are in life right now. And yeah, um, but it's interesting that leaving Australia, a place that I have been home more than I have anywhere else on earth, right? And really closing that last chapter of everything, leaving 2025 and before then, and really just becoming like allowing all of this now to be here. Um, it's interesting that it's like it's India that I am going back. It's in the new and I am going back, but India it was also the one place that existed right in that in between zone last time. Um, and this for me, it's like seeing the symbolism and the metaphor and the lesson and the meaning and the everything in every one of these places and the why. Like that is so powerful and important to me. And recognizing again, the first time I was in India, it's like I was building this tech startup. I was completely dedicated to doing that while simultaneously bringing my creative dreams to life, while dedicating myself to helping other people, who are walking paths and trying to figure all of this stuff out, right? Using travel, using psychedelics. Like I was really dedicated to that. And so I'm simultaneously in like spiritual world in my own heart, but then also, studying yoga and doing tantra and hanging out in Goa and doing the Goa thing. And like, so deep in that, but then also so deep in kind of like tech startup world on the other side of the planet. And it was almost like the first version of me bringing all of my dreams to life. And I also have been realizing in the last few months how much we get tastes of what is to come before it's really ready, right? Like the we will get a version of what is meant for us from the universe before it's really time to kind of give us that taste, right? Of like, you know, yeah, like I look back on 2023 and I knew what I was doing at the time was what I was supposed to be doing, and a lot of it didn't feel right. And I understand that now as it being like, well, that was what I was supposed to be doing, and it is what I'm doing. I just had more to heal. I wasn't able to do it the way that it was meant to be done then because I still had all of these, limiting beliefs and these attachments and these, self sabotage. Like there was just so much that I hadn't done yet. I hadn't completed the journey. I hadn't gone back to all the places. So, it's just adorable looking back on me and being like, how do you think you can bring you can't live in that timeline until you've closed this one. So I had to close that one and we just did it. Now we can be here. So crazy. It's so simple and it's so insanely complicated. Um, but yeah, going back to this place of being like, okay, it's all of it. It is, and it's the version of me that was there before who could feel all of it, who knew she was building all of it, but still was just like, why does it feel so whatever? And then recognizing too that it's like me now being like, okay, so you have this work that you're doing, you have these things that you're creating, you are the embodiment of all that you have been becoming, and now you're taking that show on the road. It's one thing to be doing this when I have the time and space to be grounded and to be transcribing my journals and to be, really sitting still and doing whatever. It's another to be like, okay, yeah, and you're not just going traveling any, like you're going to India, you're going into like the gauntlet as far as like travel goes, right? So part of me is like, okay, I'm also fully aware that it's like I could get there, I can spend a week and be like, yeah, this ain't it, and I can go anywhere else on earth that I want to. You always have that choice, by the way. Like literally you can always just like change your mind. There's no such thing as a plan. Just a cute reminder. And I do believe, there will be, I'll return and I'll see Krishna, my yoga master, and my friend Abhi, and then probably explore some new places. But yeah, just kind of step into that version where it's like, again, it sounds silly from the outside being, for me to be like, I feel like I haven't traveled in so long because obviously that is all I do. And I haven't traveled in that just kind of like meet the people, dusty feet, no idea where you're going, just, like smoothie bowl in a cafe kind of afternoon. Like it's been a long time. Uh, but now I get to do that as me, as this version, and see what that feels like. And that's really cool. And so I guess speaking to all of those things, yeah, that's the present. That's the present moment. Um, and there will be, I guess, more of that as, or maybe there won't be. I don't know. Maybe I just need to do this. There's no rules. Um. Anyway, thanks for listening. And thank you to everybody who supports this on Patreon. It truly is the way that I'm able to keep all of this whimsy and discovery and everything going. You can support me there for $3 a month. And for more, you can read my journals. I'm not publishing my journals that I'm writing currently, but they are being back posted from that, they coincide with the trip. So you can hear the story through me and then read what I was going through in my journals on Patreon. And yeah, all of those links are in the little description below. And thanks for being here. You're doing great. I love you so much. And I'll see you next time.